Amazing CEO who never knew love discovers an unexpected connection with a young intern. Jack Carter had painstakingly built his tech startup into a powerhouse, pouring everything he had into it. At 48, his world revolved around profit margins, market shares, and innovations that left competitors in the dust. Emotions, especially love, were distractions he couldn't afford. The glossy view from his office overlooked an empire born of sweat and sacrifice, yet the emptiness gnawed at his insides, cloaked in the shadow of his ambition. He confronted each day with an unwavering resolve, his heart fortified against any vulnerability. Then Emily Thompson burst into his sterile domain, the vibrant new intern with wild ideas and a relentless passion that seemed foreign to him. She brought with her the warmth of her Southern upbringing, a stark contrast to his meticulous, cutthroat demeanor. At first, Jack found her enthusiasm annoying, sickeningly optimistic against his structured routine. However, as they collaborated on a high-stakes project, her infectious determination stirred something he'd buried deep. A young woman, barely more than a child in comparison to his experience, showed promise in ways little pieces of paper like degrees and accolades never could. But every idea she proposed ignited his anxieties. Did it evoke a hint of jealousy? Would he risk revealing a sliver of his guarded self to fend off his loneliness? He wrestled with conflicting emotions that surged within him, emotions he'd trained himself to dismiss. He was a man on the precipice, unsure if he should leap into a chasm of connection or retreat further into the isolating fortress he'd crafted over decades. Jack's heart raced as he thought of the deadline approaching. This project could make or break them. Yet, as Emily shared stories of her dreams, visions painted with colors he rarely allowed himself to see, he found himself drawn to her. Amid the conference room energy, their banter raised a pulse of camaraderie he had long forsaken. Each smile, each laugh heightened his awareness, stirring feelings of longing he couldn't bear to acknowledge. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But the storm clouds gathered. An influential investor, a figure Jack knew well, threatened to withdraw vital funding, claiming Jack's inability to foster a cohesive team dynamic was damaging. Just as Jack began to mull over Emily's ideas, destined to accept vulnerability as an asset rather than a liability, this ultimatum slammed into them like a freight train. He felt the world crashing, pushing him back toward the fortress he sought so hard to escape. His mind spun with the potential fallout. Failure to secure the investor's support would undo everything he'd built. And Emily? She was becoming indispensable in ways he never envisioned. Her suggestions sparked creative solutions that felt right. But as he confronted the growing pressure, a reality emerged. He couldn't just rely on the old, safe Jack. He had to either evolve and embrace the warmth of collaboration or crumble into silence, shattered by stubborn pride. Then came the news that twisted like a dagger in his heart. Emily landed her dream job in New York, and her departure loomed closer. Just as he considered grasping for connection, she would slip through his fingers. The weight of his feelings threatened to crush him. A moment of desperation flared within him. Had he waited too long? Would he watch her fade away while he wrestled with the ghost of a life he never dared to live? As she prepared for the leap that could shape her future without him, he stood at his office window, gazing out at the sprawling city, a battleground of his heart. Would he finally choose connection, risking everything, or retreat back to the safe, unremarkable solitude he'd known? The precipice loomed yet again, and Jack faced the most significant choice of his life. Would he break free, or choose isolation yet again? The moment was suspended in time, tension thick in the air. The heavy air in Jack's office felt suffocating, as if the weight of his indecision hung like a thick fog, clinging to him, preventing escape. He turned away from the window, the sprawling city now just a backdrop to the haunting realization of his impending loss. The familiar buzz of his smartphone jolted him. It was a reminder of the time slipping away. A few short days remained before Emily left, taking with her not just her talent, but a light that had illuminated corners of his heart he preferred to keep dark. Jack contemplated the pitch deck sprawled across his conference table, filled with Emily's vibrant ideas. He'd never before realized how fluid creativity could be. Her graphics, her words, all sung with possibility. But today, they felt like a weight pinning him down. Conflict waged within him. Could he open up, share his vulnerabilities, and risk the harsh sting of rejection? Her impending departure pushed him towards a revelation he had long resisted. A moment of clarity pierced the chaos. His role as CEO extended beyond mere transactions and profits. Leading his team meant fostering a culture where ideas could flourish, where connections were made. But how could he speak of collaboration when he'd built walls so high around his emotional landscape? Determined to confront his fears, Jack gathered his courage and stepped toward the main office. The clamor of keyboards and hushed conversations felt both reassuring and alien. He spotted Emily across the room, her enthusiasm unwavering as she interacted with other interns. Watching her spirit swell with ambition fueled his own, igniting a flicker of hope against the despair he had felt just moments before. "Jack!" Emily raised her hand, and he felt an involuntary smile breach the fortress of his guarded expression. She skipped, a youthful bounce that contradicted her polished professionalism, and approached him with an excitement that filled the air. "Have you seen the latest figures? Our proposal could really impress the investors if we tweak a few visuals and refine our pitch." He opened his mouth to respond, but the words were trapped like butterflies in his throat. He admired her tenacity. It was a quality he long ago stifled under layers of ambition. Instead of issuing a curt acknowledgement as he might have normally done, he surprised himself by asking, "What do you think would be our biggest hurdle if we secured the funding?" Emily paused, looking thoughtful. "I think it's the team dynamic. It's critical to show them we can work as a cohesive unit. If they see us bickering or hesitant, they might question our potential. Let's do a team-building exercise." The suggestion startled him. A team-building exercise? He scoffed, then caught himself. He was dismissing the very essence of what he was trying to embrace. "Yeah, we can show how our collaboration actually fuels creativity." Her eyes sparkled. Just think about it. Her enthusiasm was contagious, and for the first time, he thought of grabbing the moment as if it were a lifeline. "What if we hold a brainstorming session? Open forum. Everyone can pitch in." "Exactly. That's the spirit," she exclaimed. As they continued to talk, the fear that had overshadowed him began to lift. Perhaps he could learn to foster a culture of vulnerability without compromising the strength he had worked so hard to create. Before he could fully grasp this shift in perspective, his phone chimed again, this time with a message from the investor, the request for an urgent meeting. It signaled the urgency of a decision looming ahead. Jack felt the tension clutch him once more, but now it held a different weight. It was intertwined with resolve. He glanced at Emily, her idealism and energy filling him with a determination that felt both foreign and exhilarating. Would this meeting reaffirm his commitment to isolation, or would it catalyze a decisive moment of connection? With his professional future hanging in the balance, he would have to navigate both the corporate game and the possibility of opening his heart, all within the next few days. The stakes had never been higher, and the clock was ticking down to the most critical decision he'd ever faced. As he walked back to his office, he understood the depth of his situation. He could either evolve beyond the confines of his fortress, or continue retreating into his self-imposed solitude. But somewhere deep down, he sensed he was ready to step off that ledge and embrace the leap into an uncertain future. Jack entered his office, heart racing as the potential consequences of his impending meeting with the investor loomed ominously. His mind raced. He could focus solely on securing funding or risk vulnerability by embracing the team's collective spirit, as Emily suggested. The clock ticked steadily, and he felt paradoxically paralyzed by the notion of moving forward. The conference table, littered with Emily's ideas, felt like a battleground. What if he stumbled over his words? What if the investors saw through him? He paced, attempting to dispel the restlessness building within him. Yet each step seemed to echo his doubts more loudly. As a CEO, he had always prided himself on presenting a polished exterior. Still, the urgency of his situation made him question whether that facade was worth preserving if it meant stifling the growth of his team. Taking a deep breath, he conjured Emily's bright enthusiasm, the spark igniting a desire for change within him. He recalled her insistence that teamwork would demonstrate their potential to succeed. What would it look like for Jack to genuinely engage with his team? In a moment of defiance against his own patterns, he resolved to hold that brainstorming session before the official meeting with the investors. He needed to demonstrate to his team and to himself that creativity didn't flourish in isolation. It grew in the symmetry of collaboration and trust. "Let's do this," he muttered under his breath. He sent a message to the team to gather in the conference room in 5 minutes. The anticipation was a nervous thrill. Would they rally around him, or would the underlying tension he'd nurtured within the culture of his company bubble to the surface? As his co-workers filed in, Jack noticed their expressions. Curiosity mingled with the usual professional apprehension. They were used to briefing meetings filled with statistics and demands rather than discussions that acknowledged individuality. "Hey, everyone," he started, the knot in his stomach tightening as he stood before them. "Today, I want us to brainstorm ideas for our pitch to the investors." Silence hung in the air. A few heads nodded, but he could sense their hesitance. They were so accustomed to him dictating the terms of their collaboration that it felt foreign to turn to them for input. He pressed on, determined to overcome the discomfort. "This is a chance for all of us, together, to shape our proposal. I want to hear every thought, even the wildest ones. Creativity thrives in diversity." Tentative hands went up slowly, and Jack felt the suffocating tension loosen just a little. The first voice came from Carla, one of the interns. "What if we showcased a story, a narrative around how our project can impact users?" Jack felt a flicker of relief. Great idea! Storytelling could add depth. As the brainstorming session unfolded, ideas started to flow. The atmosphere transformed from apprehension to exploration, each contribution building upon the last. Laughter erupted, and with it, Jack encountered a sense of exhilaration he hadn't experienced in years. Yet, as he engaged with them, he realized he was still holding back an essential part of himself. Why was it so hard to articulate his insecurities or the struggles he faced? To do so would mean stepping away from the rigid CEO persona he had cultivated. After an hour of vibrant exchanges, Jack exclaimed, "This is incredible! Let's consolidate these ideas and develop the best visuals with Emily's input." The team buzzed with excitement, but a weight remained on his chest. Stepping into vulnerability still felt like an act of bravery he wasn't finished with quite yet. He needed to confront what lay beneath his cold leadership facade. Was he afraid of connection or afraid of losing something once he let it in? As he dismissed the meeting, Jack saw Emily linger, her gaze searching his. "Jack," she ventured, her voice soft, versus the chaotic energy they had just shared. "There's magic happening here. You should trust it." Her words hung heavy in the air, settling over him. What if he did? What would trusting lead to? He had initiated the transformation, but he hadn't yet completed it. Stepping away, he thought about the investor meeting. He could enter with newfound courage, but could he expose himself to the kind of connection that could alter everything, professionally and personally? Jack realized the true test awaited him, navigating the dual landscapes of his ambitions and his heart. As he prepared for the meeting, he knew he could no longer evade the potential for real engagement. With anticipation steeping in the air, Jack sat back down, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Could he embrace the leap, or would he succumb to fear once again? The moment of truth drew near. Jack leaned back in his chair, wrestling with the weight of his thoughts. Anxiety swirled within him, a chaotic storm, amplifying the doubts that hovered like an ominous cloud. The memory of the brainstorming session still buzzed in his veins, a juxtaposition to the formal dynamics he was about to navigate with the investors. In those moments of collaboration, he had glimpsed a side of leadership that felt liberating, the connection fostered by vulnerability and genuine enthusiasm. Yet, as the hour for the investor meeting approached, the familiar, cold grip of professionalism began to encroach upon his newfound resolve. What if the team's spirited input wasn't enough? What if he failed to translate that excitement into compelling results? He stood and paced the room, his footsteps echoing on the polished floor, punctuating the silence that enveloped him. Jack's mind betrayed him with a relentless barrage of what-ifs, drawing him away from the possibilities that lay ahead. The pressure to present a business persona competed fiercely with his desire to embrace authenticity. He felt cornered between two distinct versions of himself, one polished yet emotionally distant, the other raw and inviting yet untested in the corporate arena. Glancing at the clock, he expelled a breath and forced himself to an epiphany. He had come too far with the team's ideas and their enthusiasm. Collective energy to retreat into stone-faced leadership. This meeting was not merely an opportunity for funding, it was the manifestation of trust and collaboration that he could no longer ignore. As he prepared, Jack envisioned the diverse narratives crafted during the session, each story brimming with imagination and potential. He imagined presenting not just a dry statistical pitch, but a dynamic tale that brought their innovation to life. What if he shifted the narrative to showcase how the project infused creativity and passion into their business model? Embracing this revelation, he grabbed the stack of notes and began to jot down key phrases from the brainstorming session. Every scribble on the page felt liberating, a step toward embracing vulnerability and admitting that it was okay to be uncertain. Jack could no longer defer this moment. He had cultivated a team capable of extraordinary things. It was time for him to embody that same energy. With an unfamiliar sense of clarity, he committed to the path of honesty and engagement, vowing to showcase not only the brilliance of the individuals behind the ideas, but also the compelling human stories that lay within each pitch. As he walked into the meeting room, the investors seated across the table looked intimidatingly polished, their faces unreadable, business ties neatly knotted. A twinge of trepidation coursed through him, but he stood firm, recalling the laughter and ideas of the team. The doubts whispered in his mind, but their weight crumbled beneath the conviction of his purpose. "Thank you for joining us today," he started, his voice steady, but without the hard edge that typically accompanied his presentations. It felt different, more human. "I'm excited to share a vision with you, one that reflects our team's identity." He glanced at the investors, their expressions shifting. He could sense their curiosity piqued. As he delved into storytelling, the impact and possibility of their innovation, Jack gradually opened up, folding in occasional personal vignettes about his own journey. He even included anecdotes about the brainstorming session, highlighting the vibrant participation from every team member. Yet, amidst this flow of thoughts, he wrestled with the nagging realization that shifting dynamics required more than external changes. It demanded confronting the internal shift, too. What was he truly sacrificing in opening the door to vulnerability? By the end of the presentation, he met their eyes, not with polished professional bravado, but with a level of sincerity that was both thrilling and terrifying. Would they respond positively to this version of him, or would they recoil at the rawness he had laid before them? As discussions continued around the table, Jack pondered whether he could sustain this level of openness. And what would happen when they dug deeper, asking questions that challenged his still buried insecurities? The session drew to a close, and now he was left with an unexpected surge of anticipation coupled with anxiety. He yearned for validation, not only from the investors, but from his own sense of self. Jack realized he had cracked open a door he could not simply close again. Could he truly navigate these uncharted waters and bridge the gap between the leader he had always been and the leader he yearned to become? The answers awaited him just beyond the horizon. Jack sat at the conference table, its surface reflecting the glossy light of the overhead bulbs. The investors had left with polite nods and tight-lipped smiles, their responses cautious, their excitement muted. The room felt hollow, echoes of his heartfelt pitch lingering but dissipating like morning fog. Disappointment gnawed at him. Did his vulnerability sink like a stone, or was it the seed for something more resilient? He picked at a loose thread on his blazer, his mind racing through the possibilities. He had been authentic, unlike anything he had presented before, but what if the rawness had only alienated them? He had ventured onto a precipice, but the outcome remained shrouded in uncertainty. At that moment, a team member, Sarah, entered the room, her presence brightening the atmosphere. She had that infectious spirit, a constant reminder of the energy he had aimed to convey. "Hey, how did it go?" Her voice trembled with excitement and concern. "Could have gone better," Jack admitted, his tone laced with a hint of defeat. He felt the weight of her gaze, urging him to reassess. "I tried something different, I really did, but I don't know if they responded to it." "Different is good," she insisted, her eyes wide with enthusiasm. "You showed them who you are. That's not easy, Jack. They're used to sterile pitches. You stood out." But standing out felt precarious. He suppressed a sigh. "What if this is how they always remember me now? Vulnerable Jack, the guy who took risks he couldn't back up." An avalanche of doubt begun to pile up inside him. What if they write us off? "Or they see a leader who's willing to take a chance," she countered. "Leaders inspire others. Your honesty could stick with them. It might even open doors you didn't expect." He pondered her words, letting them simmer within. Could vulnerability truly be a strength? The corporate ladder felt less about climbing and more about navigating imposed expectations. Perhaps he had been pursuing the wrong kind of success. Did it matter if he shifted the dynamics of traditional leadership to embrace connection? Jack decided it was time to seek more clarity. "Can we meet as a team again? I want to leverage that energy from our brainstorming session. Perhaps we can refine our approach." Sarah grinned, her enthusiasm palpable. "Absolutely, I'll coordinate with everyone." As she left the room, Jack turned his thoughts inward. He began to question where his fears originated. In the pursuit of success, had he immobilized his ability to connect with others? He recognized a pattern. He had relied on a facade of competence to avoid uncertainty, only to discover that authenticity could wield its own power. The next few days were a whirlwind of meetings, collaborations with the team. They shared ideas, reframed narratives, infused their pitches with personal stories, and crafted a presentation that felt alive and inviting. Jack fell into a rhythm with his team, listening intently and embracing their input. By distilling their collective voice, Jack saw a new vision emerge, one built on vulnerability and shared ambition. However, a creeping sensation lingered. What lay ahead was still uncharted. Had he truly transformed, or was this energy just a temporary surge? Jack found himself haunted by the thought that if their next encounter with the investors went poorly, he would be left facing a greater dread, the fear of exposing his true self and failing again. As the day of the follow-up meeting approached, he felt an unsettling mix of hope and apprehension. It was the culmination of everything. his vulnerability, his team's collective spirit, and their unified vision. Yet the pressure to succeed felt double-edged. He took a deep breath, reminding himself of the commitment he had made to embrace this shift in leadership. Yet, as he prepared, a nagging question persisted. Would this breakthrough be enough to secure their future, or would the curtain fall on his new approach before it had a chance to flourish? The clock on the wall ticked louder, mirroring the racing of his heartbeat. Could he truly redefine who he was as a leader and embrace vulnerability without being consumed by it? Just moments before stepping into the meeting, he felt a stirring in his gut. An opportunity awaited that could either solidify his transformation or plunge him back into doubt. Jack took one last deep breath as he pushed the door open to the conference room. The familiar scent of polished wood mixed with the understated aroma of fresh coffee filled the air. He was greeted by the eyes of the investors, their expressions shifting from passive interest to a curious attentiveness that felt almost electric. As he began the presentation, he felt a rush of adrenaline, a mixture of excitement and anxiety. The slides behind him projected the team's collaborative work, vibrant images, compelling narratives, and the very essence of their vision. But this time, it wasn't just about the statistics or projections. It was about the story they were creating. He glanced at Sarah, who gave him a reassuring nod from her seat at the back. The words flowed more freely now. Jack spoke of risks taken and lessons learned, integrating his own experiences into the narrative while weaving in bits of his team's insights. Each mention of vulnerability transformed the atmosphere. It was as if he had tapped into a wellspring of resonance. The investors leaned closer, their earlier hesitations fading. However, increasingly deliberate about his delivery, Jack could feel doubt creeping in. What if he misstepped again? He heard one of the investors whisper to another, the sound sending a shudder down his spine. His thoughts spiraled into overdrive. Was he losing them? Were they merely indulging his convictions? He glanced at his slides. Reassurance momentarily in their visual harmony, but a buried insecurity gnawed at him, demanding acknowledgement. Had he merely replaced one facade with another? He fought against the impulse to shut down, to retreat into expectation. Instead, he let the authenticity flow, refusing to shield his nervousness or uncertainty from the room. Expectations can be a heavy weight, he said, watching as their eyes widened in anticipation. As leaders, we engage with others on a multitude of levels, and authenticity is more than just a strategy, it's a necessity. Embracing our vulnerabilities can lead us to a deeper connection, not just with our teams, but with our clients as well. It was then he noticed the unexpected spark of interest on one investor's face. A woman he recognized from previous meetings. Her expression softened, as if she could relate. A connection ignited, not just with her, but with the entire room. An understanding that perhaps they were all navigating this uncertain landscape together. After finishing, the silence in the room felt electric, charged with possibilities. The tension hung thick, neither applause nor criticism forthcoming. Jack's heart raced. He could see the investors exchanging glances before one finally spoke. "Thank you, Jack. That was unconventional," she began carefully. "I can say you've made us rethink how we approach our investments, not just as transactions, but as connections." Relief washed over him, but the undercurrent of tension remained. What followed felt like a collision of worlds, the potential joy of success standing juxtaposed against the lingering fear of insufficiency. As conversations picked up around the table, Jack felt buoyed by their interest, yet a question lingered in his mind. Would this shift be significant enough to catapult them forward? His heart raced with the uncertainty of the answer. When the meeting ended, Jack stepped out of the room, shaken but resolute.
Their reactions were still uncertain in his mind, leaving him unable to decide if he'd made a breakthrough or simply stirred a pot that could boil over. In the animated hallway, Sarah approached with an eager smile. "That was incredible! You really connected with them!" Jack wanted to embrace that moment, but a disturbing voice whispered within him, asking if success would be fleeting. He longed for validation, but as he faced her, he realized something deeper. A shift had begun not only in how he spoke, but in how he perceived his journey. "Do you think they'll invest?" he asked, the hope evident in his voice. "Absolutely, but either way, you've changed the game. You're becoming that leader we need," she replied, her sincerity lighting up the conversation. Suddenly, their banter was interrupted by a familiar face, someone who had never been too kind to him, an executive whose sharp words often lingered. As she approached, Jack's body tensed involuntarily. The time had come to face the shadows of his past, and he knew it could change everything. Jack stood still as she neared, the atmosphere shifting around him. Regan, the formidable executive, had often served as a reminder of his insecurities, her sharp intellect matched only by her cutting remarks. He could feel the skepticism radiating from her as she approached, her gaze unwavering. This was a confrontation he had long anticipated, a moment when he would either stand tall or falter. "Impressive presentation, Jack," she said coolly, crossing her arms. "You've clearly decided to take some risks lately. But tell me, do you believe vulnerability can really lead to results, or is it merely a fashionable trend?" Her question struck him like an unexpected blow. A wave of defensive instinct surged, but he took a breath, choosing to confront rather than deflect. "I believe authenticity builds trust, Regan. People invest in the person behind the proposal, not just the numbers on a slide." Regan raised an eyebrow, signaling skepticism woven with interest. "Bold approach, but let's not romanticize relationships while we're in the business of making profits. Will that sincerity hold up when the numbers aren't there?" He felt the weight of her scrutiny, but refused to flinch. "That's where you're mistaken. Sincerity isn't a weakness, it's an asset. It fosters stronger partnerships, even if it's challenging. We can't abandon authenticity for fleeting gains." Jack sensed an air of tension, not just from Regan, but from himself, and the stakes felt higher than ever. For a fleeting moment, Regan's expression faltered, revealing a hint of admiration. Was he breaking through her armor? He quickly seized the opportunity. "I understand your perspective, but I'm learning that real connections might just be what we need to innovate." "Interesting," she replied, now observing him more closely. "How will you keep that balance?" His heart thumped in his chest. This was the moment he had been rehearsing in his mind. By staying grounded in our mission, by welcoming diverse ideas, and recognizing that connection fuels creativity. It's not an either-or, it can be both. As she considered his words, he felt a shift within himself, a growing conviction. In speaking his truth, he reclaimed a part of his identity he feared had been lost. Still, don't expect everyone to resonate with that philosophy. This isn't about your past successes, it's about what you're willing to do now, Regan replied, her tone softened slightly. Jack nodded, understanding the challenge. "I'm committed to evolving, Regan. I refuse to be boxed in by anyone's expectations, including mine. This is about being a leader who learns, adapts, and authenticates growth." She examined him with keen eyes. "Perhaps there's more to you than I thought. Just remember that being a leader also means weathering the storm when the tide turns." With that, she turned and walked away, leaving Jack standing in the hall, a myriad of emotions battling within him. He had stood up to a daunting figure, blending vulnerability and assertiveness in his approach. But was it enough to shift his own narrative? Sarah rejoined him moments later, her eyes alight with curiosity. She had witnessed their exchange. "That was bold, Jack. I hardly."
"Ever see Regan back down? What did she say?" "She challenged me. Wondered if vulnerability could really drive results. Jack's mind raced as he processed the intense conversation. Maybe it's what I fear, a notion that could threaten my approach. Or it could be the turning point. You're not just pitching ideas, you're redefining your approach. Her faith in him was palpable, and for the first time in a while, he felt a spark that hinted at the possibility of self-acceptance. As they continued down the hallway, Jack contemplated his next moves. This encounter pushed him towards understanding that true leadership was about navigating conflicts, embracing growth, and not merely seeking validation. But beneath the newfound certainty, lingering doubts crept back, reminding him that the past still hung over him. What else awaited him if he'd chosen to confront these shadows? The moment of truth lingered, the journey far from over. Jack realized that the path ahead may dredge up more adversaries than just Regan. Would he be brave enough to navigate those realities? And as he stepped into the elevator, the doors gliding shut before him, he wondered what awaited him at the next floor. A test of his emerging beliefs, or another hidden challenge ready to unravel everything he had worked for. As the elevator pinged and the doors slid open, Jack stepped into the pulsing corridor of the office, a buzz of activity swirling around him. The atmosphere felt charged, as if the very air echoed with unspoken expectations. He brushed a hand through his hair, the remnants of his conversation with Regan still echoing in his mind. The encounter had been bracing, igniting a fire he hadn't realized he had within. Yet with that fire came a haunting realization. Vulnerability held risks he hadn't yet fully assessed. Were the wounds he'd gained in the past truly healing, or was he merely stepping into a new battlefield unarmed? He spotted Emma, the junior analyst, poring over reports at her desk. She looked up, her brow furrowing slightly. "You okay?" "Yeah, just had a meeting with Regan," Jack replied, his voice steadier than he felt. It was intense. She leaned back, instinctively sensing layers beneath his words. "You seem different," she remarked, her interest piqued. "I mean that in a good way, like you're ready to take on something big." Jack chuckled, uncertainty threading through him. "Thanks, but it feels more like I'm standing at the edge of a cliff. Meaningful, sure, but still unnerving. Sometimes taking a leap is the most authentic thing you can do," Emma said, her demeanor earnest. He regarded her, surprised by her insight. Beneath that youthful exterior, she possessed a wisdom he hadn't anticipated, something that forced him to reassess the lens through which he viewed not only others, but also himself. "You've got more to offer than you realize, Emma," Jack said, his voice firm. "Your perspective matters. Don't be afraid to share it." As he left her desk, his heart raced with a fresh sense of purpose. Emma's words replayed in his mind, a reminder that leadership wasn't just about authority. It was about fostering an environment where every voice could resonate, including his own. Though vulnerable, he recognized the power in embracing this shift. The months leading to this moment had often felt like battling shadows from his past, each one insisting he maintain a veneer of detachment to shield himself from scrutiny. But confronting Regan and now reflecting on Emma's encouragement was shifting something fundamentally within him. What if true collaboration could unlock opportunities he had previously stunted due to fear? Determined, Jack sought out his team, ready to embrace the diversity of thought he had previously undervalued. Mind swirled with strategies on how to implement a more inclusive brainstorming session, where everyone's input would not only be valued, but seen as pivotal to the project's success. Jack summoned courage as he gathered the team in the conference room, their collective anxiety palpable. He cleared his throat. "Today, I want to lead differently. I want us all to collaborate more openly. Each idea is vital, even the wild ones. Let's challenge ourselves." The room shifted, electric with uncertainty and burgeoning possibility. He could read the silent skepticism, even apprehension, but he stood firm, willing to bear that discomfort with them. As discussions unfurled, ideas collided wildly, some fantastic, some bewildering. Yet Jack felt the collective energy build, a blossoming of creativity he hadn't anticipated. Every voice mattered, And while doubts lurked in the corners of his mind, their contributions encouraged growth that echoed his earlier confrontations with Regan. But as proposals flowed, so did challenges. A vicious debate erupted as differences surfaced, each position firm and resolute. It spiraled inward, tension twisting in the air, and Jack's resolve began to crack under the pressure. "Wait," he said, instinctively raising a hand, his voice steady. "Let's take a breath. I believe this conflict is important. It means we care about what we're creating together. Can we steer this into constructive criticism instead?" The room quieted, curiosity replacing initial frustration. Jack instinctively felt the need to marinate in this moment. The echo of honest disagreement had unveiled an undercurrent of potential, tightening its grip on him. Yet doubts lingered. What if he didn't hold it together? What if vulnerability led to chaos instead of innovation? The shadows of his past resurfaced, whispering threats against his newfound belief. As Jack leaned into the discourse, grappling with both excitement and fear, he couldn't help but wonder, would they emerge stronger, or would the weight of unresolved conflict crush this fragile momentum? What awaited in the depths of this vulnerability? The session pressed on, and Jack felt the stakes grow with every moment. Would he be able to turn this into a path of discovery, or would it lead him to uncover deeper foes hiding in the shadows? The harsh fluorescent lights of the conference room flickered as Jack felt the tension coiling in the air, wrapping around him like an unwelcome embrace. The debate had grown increasingly heated, and he could sense the weight of differing opinions pressing down, threatening to shatter the fragile trust he had begun to foster among his team. In this moment of palpable uncertainty, he could hear the echo of Regan's warning in his mind. Vulnerability is a double-edged sword. Drawing a breath, he redirected the meeting's energy, a need to reclaim control surging within him. "Let's remember why we're here," Jack urged. "We're not just tossing around ideas, we're seeking authenticity in our roles." Lifting his gaze, he met the eyes of each team member, silently challenging them to focus on the goal rather than the discord. "We might not agree right now, but we can find a solution that incorporates all our voices." Rarely had he allowed himself such openness in a work setting. Past experiences warned him that raw emotions could derail progress. Yet, standing vulnerable within this group, Jack realized that a seed of resilience was forming. Each opposing viewpoint revealed not just a challenge, but an opportunity for deeper understanding. As the discussions continued, fueled by the initial conflict, an unexpected thought surfaced. Could dissent be his ally instead of an adversary? Ideas and strategies began to blend, and Jack took note of the emerging patterns within the chaos. Encouraged, he started to weave individual contributions into a cohesive framework, steering their energy toward a shared vision. It was then that Emma, shifting in her seat, voiced a concern that hadn't yet surfaced. What if we're overlooking our limitations in pursuing these ambitious goals? Is it worth risking burnout or failure? Her question, framed by anxiety, hung in the air, unspooling an unspoken truth that resided at the core of their ambitions. Jack felt a wave of admiration for her bravery. It wasn't just about pushing boundaries. It was also about recognizing personal and team limits. "Great point, Emma," Jack acknowledged, feeling more confident than he had in days. Navigating risks should always accompany our aspirations. Perhaps we should also set benchmarks to ensure we're not losing ourselves in the frenzy of innovation. What does that look like for us? Each team member began to contribute, shifting from defensive stances to constructive collaboration. The air of animosity faded. Jack found himself guiding the dialogue, embracing uncertainty instead of resisting it. For once, he didn't feel like a solitary warrior on a battlefield. He felt like a leader amidst a thriving coalition of ideas. But beneath this clarity, a disquieting whisper echoed in his mind. What if he allowed this greater openness to infiltrate his leadership style, only to realize that it was a double-edged sword? The thought lingered, uncomfortable yet compelling. Was he inviting the chaos of vulnerability into his realm to find connection, or was he merely courting disaster? As the session wrapped up, Jack's heart raced.
He had steered them away from the brink, but the remnants of tension remained, like a forgotten promise that could either crumble or
evolve into something profound. The discussions had unveiled not just the potential of the group, but also exposed Jack's self-doubts. What had he truly unlocked within himself? Stepping out of the conference room, he met Emma's gaze. "Thanks for that insight. It changed the trajectory of the conversation." She smiled softly, yet a flicker of concern shadowed her expression. "I hope it helps us move forward." Jack nodded, but the unease settled in his gut once more. What would tomorrow look like if this newfound balance didn't remain intact? How would he handle future disagreements? As questions tumbled in his mind, he was struck by the realization that the real challenge lay just ahead. The next phase would require him to forge deeper connections, pushing him past beyond arguments into genuine ramifications for his leadership. And that, above all, terrified him. What awaited him as he ventured further into these uncharted waters? With the team's trust in his hands and an internal conflict raging beneath the surface, he pressed onward, acutely aware that the real test of his evolution was just beginning. Would he be able to navigate through this interpersonal maze without losing himself along the way? Jack awoke the next morning, his mind buzzing with the echoes of yesterday's breakthroughs. The energy from the brainstorming session had ignited a spark that propelled him forward. Yet, lingering apprehensions begged for resolution. Today felt pivotal, the culmination of his journey thus far, but also a new beginning, challenging him to apply his growth in more substantial, lasting ways. He arrived at the office early, an unusual move for him, but one rooted in his newfound commitment to embracing vulnerability. Reflecting on the chaotic conversations of the previous day, Jack knew the way forward was clearer than ever. It required him not just to speak up, but to deeply engage with his team, recognizing the courage they demonstrated by contributing to the dialogue, even when it had become uncomfortable. As his colleagues arrived, Jack greeted each one with authenticity, exchanging smiles and genuine conversations instead of the typical transactional greetings that had once characterized his interactions. The morning felt vibrant, palpable, an exhilarating shift filled with possibilities. He gathered the team for another meeting, this time focusing on unity and subtle shifts in their project's trajectory. "Thank you all for your input yesterday," he began, offering his customary yet warmer tone. "I recognize that we faced some challenges, but that's what makes innovation thrive. Today, let's summarize our discussions and reset the objectives, ensuring we can move forward without sacrificing our well-being or the integrity of our ideas." Jack observed the shift in energy around the table. The smiles widened. It was as if the team sensed the collective commitment to fostering an honest dialogue. They were no longer just employees, they were committed partners. During the course of the meeting, while reviewing key developments, Jack instigated moments of reflection. "What would you have changed about yesterday's conversation?" he probed. One by one, team members shared
thoughts. Some pointed out where emotions ran high. Others acknowledged the importance of debate in pushing boundaries. For the first time, they engaged openly with their vulnerabilities, not just their ambitions. Jack felt a swell of pride and relief wash over him. These moments affirmed the potential he had long stifled under the guise of stoic leadership. The discussions surged forward, enriched by trust, as members reassured one another that differences only strengthen the team's potential. Jack could feel the embarrassment of his previous detachment dissipate. Here, in this moment of connection, this tapestry of honest dialogue, he recognized definitive satisfaction. Later that afternoon, an unexpected email arrived. It was from the investors firm, expressing their intent to proceed with funding based on the refined proposal and the energy Jack had curated during the discussions. Relief flooded him, but it was laced with astonishment. In the days that followed, the transformation within Jack solidified. They secured the funding, yes, but he realized that the real triumph had been his evolution as a leader. He learned to nurture open communication, advocate for innovative thought, and celebrate vulnerability as an asset instead of a liability. To cap off this triumphant week, he organized a team celebration, something he had never deemed necessary in the past. They gathered to reflect on their collective achievements, laughter ringing out amidst a culture of encouragement and support. Jack couldn't remember when he had felt so at peace with himself in his role. As he looked around at his team, he saw bright faces, each illuminated by shared experiences and achievements. There was more laughter, more ideas unleashed in a tapestry of creativity, and something in them had changed. They believed in each other and in him. In that moment of completion, Jack realized that his transformation extended far beyond financial success. It reached into the very core of who he aspired to be. Vulnerability had led him here, creating an environment where connections flourished, where every voice mattered, a true leader forged through collaboration. He grinned, filled with genuine pride, and felt the last echoes of doubt vanish. Jack had not only transformed his leadership style, he'd embraced humanity within it. He had chosen connection over isolation and accomplished what he never knew he truly sought. And as he closed the day, he promised himself that he would continue to nurture this strength, a leader who thrived with his team side by side, open and fearless in the pursuit of their joint vision. Now is your chance to seize the moment. Subscribe immediately to this channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. You need to leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help these powerful stories reach those who need them most. Comment below with your reactions and theories about Jack's journey. What resonated with you? And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion and find inspiration in their own lives.